Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfood, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom with our host, Bob Olson, who will now introduce today's show and speaker.
Presenting I Thought You'd Like to Know, which is a show featuring very interesting people who have a message for you. And we certainly have two very interesting people tonight. We have Jacob Nelson and Jonathan Stute. And they have a very interesting project that we're going to find out about in just a moment. But first of all, we'd like to find out a little bit about them personally. We'll start with you, Jonathan. Were you a cradle Catholic?
Actually, I was not. I grew up in a prosperity gospel church and spent a few years in the Messianic Jewish Roots movement. And during that time, right after my Messianic Jewish phase, I spent a lot of time at a very bread and butter evangelical church studying the church fathers. And that got me thinking. And in 2011, I had a number of friends who were very solid Catholics, and throughout a period of about 2 years, I had a lot of conversations with them and entered into the church in April of 2011. Okay,
and now you're connected with Holy Apostles College and Seminary in Cromwell, Connecticut, and you understand you're an online student, right?
Yes, sir. I'm getting my second master's in philosophy. I'm focusing on systematic philosophy for a number of reasons, and I think I'm also slated to teach a massive online open course in February.
Wow, that's great. So, Jacob, what about you now? Are you a cradle Catholic?
I was born and raised Catholic. My dad is a convert. My mom is 100% Italian, and so we had a very cultural Catholicism growing up. My grandparents both 100% Italian. We're also Catholic and lived with us, so I had a great formation as a little boy, but when I was a teenager, I left the church and any semblance of faith after getting arthritis in my knees and having to quit baseball and leave my real God of baseball at that point and being angry with the actual God about that. And then on my confirmation retreat when I was 15, I was healed of arthritis through prayer, and that started my journey back into the church. I studied human services for my undergraduate work and then went on to a master's in theology with Ave Maria, and now with Holy Apostles for my master's in philosophy.
And what is this project that you two are working on?
Well, the project is called the New England Didache, and it's intended to be a largely student-run and student-contributed journal for Holy Apostles College and Seminary. And what we're doing is we're drawing on the various concentrations at Holy Apostles in their graduate-level program to provide a place for students, alumni, professors, and visiting professors from other colleges or institutions to help, most especially the graduate students, learn how to be excellent academics, how to express themselves better, how to learn about the process of being a good colleague by being able to edit and do peer reviewing, which is an essential component of working in academia. And part of the reason that we're doing this is that in the new evangelization, one thing that we absolutely need to do is remember to go back to the sources, so the resource mons, and we're looking at this classical thought, especially through the theology and philosophy of St. Thomas Aquinas and philosophy of Aristotle and others, and trying to bring that forward back into the archetypal era and express it in terms that people will understand it here and now. And what we're trying to do with this is help students at Holy Apostles who may be endeavoring to become professors or teachers bolster the resume a little bit so that way they can leave Holy Apostles as graduates not only with a great education but with an enormous amount of experience in writing and expressing their views and learning how to be critical of other scholars' work so that way they can be excellent representatives for the faith out in the field of academia.
Now, how did you two get together, Jacob and Jonathan?
Well, Jonathan and I met at a local parish, became friends after getting to know each other a little bit. It was a little tenuous at first. Our first discussion was a battle over the nature of time. John was not yet a Catholic, and I was just finishing up my master's in theology. So we had a rousing debate about time, and that kind of kicked off our friendship and our working relationship as well. It was about 6 or 7 years ago now.
Yeah, something like that. It was just before I came to the church.
So both of you are in Minnesota, huh?
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't sure about that, but then this was quite a bit before you got connected with Holy Apostles.
Oh, certainly. I don't think either of us really knew what Holy Apostles was at the time, and to tell you the truth, higher education wasn't even on my radar at that time in my life either. I did not do very well in high school, wasn't really a model student, and there's a number of reasons for that. But yeah, higher education was not something that I really saw myself getting into at the time. But I was still very interested in theology and philosophy.
Now, how did you partner with Holy Apostles on this journal?
I think it started with my own journey to Holy Apostles after my time at Ave Maria. I wanted to go on to master's level work in philosophy to bolster my degree in theology. And because of my life circumstances, it had to remain online, and the higher education opportunities in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area are either very expensive or not always in line with the church. And through a lot of searching, I came across Holy Apostles, and I started that about 3 years ago. I took a year off in preparation for getting married and new jobs and that kind of thing. So after a lot of research, I found Holy Apostles just for study, and then Jonathan joined me this semester. He had come up with this idea for the journal about a year ago, I think, and it slowly took form over that time until Dr. Mahfoud joined us, or partnered with us.
He's advising
for us. Yeah.
Yeah, I originally was going to follow after Jacob's footsteps and go to the Institute for Pastoral Theology through Ave Maria about 3 or 4 years ago, but then that program folded, and I ended up going to the Augustine Institute, and the price went up, and it was almost too much for me to pay by myself. And so I actually had a lot of conversations with Dr. Mahfoud about the theology program at Holy Apostles, and ultimately it happened that I decided to stay at the Augustine Institute for my master's in theology for a number of reasons. But I still stayed in contact with Dr. Mahfoud, and he and I have been corresponding back and forth from time to time since 2013, I think. And like Jake said, it was about a year ago that I had the idea for the journal. And I had some conversations with Dr. Mahfoud about how to format it, how to frame it, and how to present it to the staff at Holy Apostles as a potential project. And so really Dr. Mahfoud was the biggest contact within that within the period of time where I was thinking about this journal project.
Well, is this a reality now? I mean, are you? Is it out? Is the journal out?
It is not out as in published yet, but we did have a mock draft go out earlier in January, I think. Dr. Mahfoud released it to the staff and to the students. And right now that mock draft was simply something to send to the whole of the Holy Apostles body to get some feedback on how we could improve it and what their thought was on the project itself and the format that we had chosen. We're planning on launching our first official edition in the fall of 2017.
Wow, okay, good. What's the goal of the journal? I think you may have answered part of this question before, but the goal of the journal?
I think the goal really is to reach out to the culture, whether that's people who are just beginning schooling, people out of schooling, graduate, other universities, places of higher learning, but really to take the perennial philosophy and theology of the church and reach the culture at large. a lot of academic journals are really specific to their fields, which this will be too as far as the content, but we don't want to frame it like a medical journal is for doctors. We want to frame it as something that can really reach out to the masses and really aid the new evangelization and the mission of Holy Apostles College and Seminary, as well as helping graduate students not make a name for themselves, but break into a field that can be quite difficult because of various motives of people in higher education at different universities, things like that. Being able to be published is such a big part if you want to go on to teaching, whether it's at the high school level or prep school, university, college, whatever it may be. So I think the mission really is first and foremost to evangelize and to catechize the Catholic world at large, but also in a more specific way to aid graduate students in their career paths and in serving the church in that way.
Right, and that's even how I really started thinking about the journal. I was looking at what it takes to become a philosophy professor, even at a community college here in Minnesota, and a lot of the applications a lot of the job descriptions I found required that you have at least one published paper. And I'm thinking, wow, that's going to be a lot to do. And so I thought by providing something like New England Indicated to Holy Apostles, professors, students, and graduates, that it would be a very good opportunity for them to be able to find a place to learn the process of writing and also be a part of founding a very credible academic journal.
No, I was talking to someone a week or so ago on one of these interviews, and he was saying that there's a feeling that Catholic wisdom has kind of been put under a bushel. Would you, like under a bushel basket, kind of hidden away? Would you agree on that?
I'd absolutely agree with that. I think that from my experience in public schools and also my experience in youth ministry, it seems that our culture is indeed a post-Christian culture. And the post-Christian culture is, I think, unique from or distinct from a pre-Christian culture in the sense that it has a tendency to think it knows what the church teaches, or it thinks it knows what the gospel is, but really has a gross mischaracterization of it. And so I think that having a journal where people who think at the graduate level offer and express the Catholic faith in a way that's accessible to, like Jacob said, the masses, will be an excellent way to help form teachers and lay leaders in the new evangelization to re-express the gospel in a new way, to make it look like this light shining on a hill that doesn't have a bushel basket over it. And so that way they can actually access this Christian wisdom that is necessary for us to live the good life that we're all striving to attain for ourselves. Because if you don't know what your goal is, you don't know which direction you need to go. And what Christ and the gospel has done for us is it's offered us the good, and it's offered us the means to attain that good so that we can truly be happy.
Now, obviously it's going to contribute to the evangelical nature of the church, huh?
That's certainly one of the biggest, most missions there, yep. Excuse me.
Now,
I think one of the aids of that is that a lot of Catholics might be very devoted in their faith, but because that wisdom has been put under a bushel basket, so to speak, a lot of faithful Catholics don't have the philosophical structures in their mind or the verbiage or whatever it may be to actually go out and fulfill the Great Commission. They know the faith in the heart but not in the mind, and we want to engage both.
Right. Jesus said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your mind, and soul, and all your strength. So that mind part cannot be forgotten. And that's one thing Jacob and I have also noticed working in youth ministry and religious education over the last few years here is that so many religious education programs in both the schools and in the parishes tend to very often settle for mediocrity. And that's just not something we would really want to continue to promote. So part of this, too, is also to help people who are in religious education have a have a high quality resource to turn to when they're trying to teach their own faith.
Were either of you connected with the net team at all?
Yes, we were not on net. We were not on net, neither of us, but we have worked with Net Ministries quite a bit.
Yeah. They were just here recently in Connecticut, I think during this past year.
Were they?
I wasn't sure how they were doing, how active they were anymore, but I hadn't heard a lot about them, but apparently they're doing well, huh?
Yeah, they're doing a lot of work. They have a lot of missionary teams out. I think it's well over a dozen this year of I think about 10 to 12 young adults on each team. I think they do a couple thousand retreats each school year, so they're very active still.
What about the name of your journal, the New England Didache?
Yeah, Didache. It actually goes back to a document from the first century, which is purported to be written by the 12 apostles themselves, and in many ways it's a liturgical manual. It's a guide how to live the Christian life, how to be devoted daily in prayer. And so when I was thinking about the name of the journal, the word Didache more or less means like the teaching of the 12 apostles. And so with the name of the school being Holy Apostles and the purpose of the journal being to teach what is learned at Holy Apostles, I thought it appropriate to name it the Didache. And Document Food suggested that we give it a regionally unique name to make sure it stands out. And so New England Didache just rolled off the tongue very easily. And then we could also get to nickname it Ned, which is just fabulous.
That sounds good to me.
We even joked about making a mascot.
Obviously, the journal is important for today's culture. Could you expand on that a little more?
Yes, it is important for today's culture because, as you can see probably from many of the things that have been happening in the news, particularly in your guys' area, right now there is a tremendous lack of critical thinking that is permeating our culture. So often we are guided not so much by the truth and by reason, but more by our passions and by our feelings. And some of that, I think, can be seen in the values clarification that we've had, we've all been trained in our elementary and middle school and high school years, where what you do is you search down deep inside of yourself and you see what is it that I value, and then you project that onto the world, and that projection right there says that, it is indicating like this is now what I am saying is right, what I am saying is wrong. And that really doesn't hold up to a whole lot of scrutiny, nor does it, nor will it really lead to strong ethical and decision-making skills. And with the New England Didache and with projects like that, one of the things we hope to do is, yet again, try to help bring people who are trained in more classical philosophy, which has a tendency to put truth first and then passions second, if it's even in the second place, into the schools to become people who are formers of the culture by forming the minds of those who are still learning how to be people. And so one of the things that I think is a missed opportunity in the new evangelization is really doing a renewal of the school system. And that's a big concern that I have in terms of the goals of the New England Didache is helping people who are classically trained in philosophy and theology become educators themselves.
Yeah, that's great. What would you say sets this journal apart from others?
Well, again, I think it goes back to this journal. Really, the fundamental goal is to help people fall in love with wisdom. It's not strictly for academic purposes, for academic's sake. It's an academic endeavor, most certainly, but it really seeks to reach the heart as well as the mind. One of the fundamental things I work on when I work with youth is engaging the transcendental properties of truth, beauty, and goodness. And I think so often people get really stuck on one of those things, where they might get stuck on truth and really just be stuck in the mind, or on goodness and stuck in the heart. But our goal is really to harmonize the totality of the human person and their engagement with truth. And so it's not academics for academics' sake, it's academics with the goal of conversion.
Can you give us any examples of success you've had with youth using some of these things we've been talking about tonight?
Oh, yeah, I absolutely can. At Nativity, where I'm a youth minister, I run a various array of programs. I've done, I got confirmation, I have youth nights, I have the Saturday Night Alive event where middle schoolers come play crazy games, there's a little talk and there's adoration. And one of the things that's actually been most successful of all the different endeavors that I've undertaken has been my Sunday afternoon book study. And over the last 2 years here, I've gone through both, I think, 3 of C.S. Lewis's books, and we are currently going through Kevin Boast's 1 Minute Aquinas. And what I've learned is that at Nativity, there is a serious hunger for the truth. There's a serious hunger for rigorous thinking and learning what it means to be human in the fullest sense, and not just making it up for yourself. And that program right there, where we study C.S. Lewis or Thomas Aquinas, has genuinely been one of the most influential and most powerful programs that I've put together at Nativity, and I've seen some serious changes in kids through the pursuit of the intellectual aspects of the Catholic faith.
I think for me, one of my former parishes that I've worked at, I won't say the name right now, but I worked at a parish in the Archdiocese here and I helped start the expansion of our grade school at that parish into 7th and 8th grade. And I took over teaching the middle school theology program. I designed the curriculum and all of that. So it wasn't just a boxed program that so many other parishes use. And one of the fundamental things I sought to teach was the core of Vatican II, which is the universal call to holiness. And so I went about teaching in Socratic method and using perennial philosophy, teaching Lumen Gentium. And I got a lot of pushback from parents being upset about how their kids couldn't handle it, or that it was too much for 7th and 8th graders. And after about a couple of weeks, I read some of the most beautiful papers on the universal call to holiness I've ever read. I could have probably quoted a couple of my 8th graders in my own graduate level work. So I think among youth there's a great desire for truth. And once they encounter it, their hunger for it becomes insatiable, because they're constantly berated with falsehood, with smoke and mirrors, with all kinds of things in our culture, in a culture that really says there's no such thing as objective truth. And so what I found, and I know what John has found, is when you're able to engage youth with the truth of the church, the truth of humanity, it doesn't even need to be something out of the catechism, but just the truth of our existence here. Kids find conversion almost in no time, so frequently.
And to get specific, one of the more recent examples of a great success that I've had with youth ministry, I shall offer 2, but I'll be very quick with them. One girl who, when I met her, she liked her faith, but she wasn't very confident in it, and she was very timid. And after about a year of really coming to the C.S. Lewis and Thomas Aquinas groups and also confirmation, she started telling me all these stories about how she's standing up for her faith in her school, about how she successfully articulated Thomas's second way to prove the existence of God, and actually convinced a neighbor of hers who was an atheist that God doesn't exist. And when her atheist friend offered reasons why she didn't believe in God, my student was able to quickly and deftly refute those arguments. And she has done such a phenomenal job of becoming a great articulator of the faith and good defender of the faith. And I'm really looking forward to her continuing and actually getting confirmed to receive that extra grace of the Holy Spirit. I've also seen a number of kids who have been converted outright from being very skeptical of the faith and just not having the faith almost at all, to now coming to this Aquinas group and getting really excited about going home and trying to invite his sister, or applying some of the principles of virtue to his own daily life, and seeking new ways to grow in virtue, to grow in holiness. And so it's, like Jake said, kids are bombarded with falsehood and the name your own truth mentality in the world. And ultimately, if we all have to make up our own purpose and our own meaning and our own truths, then the answer is, underneath that there is no truth, that there is no meaning, there is no purpose. And that's devastating to the human psyche. We can't have that. We can't live without purpose or meaning or hope. And I think it's through through our Catholic faith, most especially, but also through the very clear articulation of the Catholic faith through people like Thomas Aquinas or Pope Benedict, that purpose is seen most clearly, and that can help give people a reason to move on, to see themselves as a part of a whole grand story that has true meaning and true goodness and true beauty to it. And I think that's really part of the reason why I have focused so much on presenting the truth of the Catholic faith, even sometimes in a very rigorous manner to my kids, who, like Jake said, they are more than capable of handling it, despite the thoughts of many people.
That's good to know. That's good to know. And what about the parents? What's their reaction now that you've been at it for a while?
Well, I think the initial reaction is indicative of a generation of people who education or the church or whatever entity has failed them. Faith formation failed them because so many in the previous generation went through faith formation, went through confirmation at 8th grade, and that's simply where their knowledge ends in terms of the faith. They're 35, 40, 50 years old, and they have an 8th grade education in terms of their faith. Mm-hmm. And so the anger that I expressed about, or in the parents about their kids learning Lumen Gentium, I think was more about the fact that their kids in 7th and 8th grade knew more than they did, and they didn't know how to handle it. But once they saw the growth of their children, one young man is now in seminary, another young lady is learning Latin at a wonderful school called Chesterton Academy up here in the Twin Cities. It's a Catholic classical academy. So she's going through the trivium and quadrivium there. The parents are thrilled. But I think, like so many things, engaging the youth through philosophy and theology is something new and untried in this generation, in the last couple generations. And so, like so many new things, it's thrown out wholesale because it's scary. But once they see the fruits of it, it changes not just the kids, but families and parishes as well. Thinking of one event that John and I work on together each year, Extreme Faith Camp, and we tie in philosophy and theology there, as well as the daily sacramental life of adoration, confession, Mass, Bible studies, rosaries, things like that.
Where do you have that?
We're moving camps actually this year because over 2 years of doing this together, we've grown too much for the former campground to hold. So we're moving camps down to Camp Victory in Zumbro Falls, Minnesota. It's about halfway from Minneapolis to Iowa. Beautiful campground, holds about 210 kids, and we're already expecting to overbook that with how many kids are coming. But, parents are skeptical. It's a good amount of money, $375 for one kid. A lot of times parents have not had their kids away from home for 5 days straight, and so parents are skeptical. They're afraid, and especially with the community I work with, the youth group that I work with right now is about 70% Latino and 15% African and 15% Anglo, and the two immigrant communities rarely send their kids overnight anywhere, let alone 5 days somewhere. And so there's a lot of skepticism, a lot of fear. But when they see their kids come back and love Christ, not just because of the culture that they grew up in, or not just because it's the thing that you do, but because of that relationship that's built with the personage of truth. The walls that parents have put up simply crumble, and their families transform. They become a household of prayer, and over the course of time, it transforms parishes. I think of one parish in our diocese has been doing this camp for, well, they actually started the camp in 2001, and they have several hundred kids go to this camp each year, and the parish built a whole new church, beautiful church, and it's very vibrant in the teachings of the faith, very committed to orthodoxy, but everybody there lives a very vibrant life, and so I just think that engagement with truth softens hearts once you can get by the initial fear or being cut to the heart, as the early church was when Peter gave his great speech after Pentecost.
No, you're in
Okay.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Don.
No, I was going to ask, are you in St. Paul Diocese then?
Yeah, the Archdiocese of St. Paul, Minneapolis.
Yeah, the Archdiocese, I meant. So, what's the reaction in the diocese?
Well, we've had a couple different bishops join us up at camp. It's not actually one camp. There's
more of a camp model.
Yeah, it's about 30 different parishes employ this camp model. And
Midwest,
mainly in our diocese, and then there's a couple that go on in some Wisconsin dioceses as well. But all the parishes sign a commitment that we keep the vision of camp as Eucharist-centered and Orthodoxy-centered. And at least in our diocese, the various bishops over the last 15, 16 years have visited from time to time and have really enjoyed being with the youth and seeing the vigor and excitement of the youth at these camps. But again, the focus there is really employing the orthodoxy, the perennial philosophy, the beautiful theology of the Church of the past 2,000 years.
What do you know about this movement of in confirmation now that they're suggesting that families, the whole family goes through the confirmation instruction?
Yep, absolutely. I think that one thing that has absolutely fallen apart in our culture that is doing the most damage to the faith is the fact that the families aren't nearly as involved. Study after study has shown that especially fathers, when they're involved with the kids' faith in a very active way, and they talk about the faith outside of Sundays, that the kids are much more likely to stay on board, and not only to stay on board, but also be passionate about their faith and continue to hand it on to their children. But when we have absent fathers in terms of the faith, the reality is totally the opposite. It's the reality that we see right now, where 85% of kids are leaving the faith by the age of 23. We're hemorrhaging young people right now, and I think one of the greatest answers to this is that intergenerational catechesis that you're talking about, and that's one thing I've really been striving to do with my own ministry, especially with confirmation, and that's actually in a way for me happened by accident. I started doing my confirmation program, and I had incentives for the kids to actually invite their parents or family members or sponsors to come to confirmation night. And there are times where I have upwards of a dozen adults who are attending confirmation along with the 32 students that we have there. And so that itself has been working itself out really well for me, and that's something I want to be more intentional on. But even renewing the vision, which I think is the only instructions written on youth ministry by the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, talks about intergenerational youth ministry as being essential for the approach to youth ministry in our times. So I think that this movement towards family-oriented confirmation in youth ministry is really what we need, because as Jacob said, a lot of the parents have missed out on learning about the faith too, and they need to learn it.
I think too, at least in our field working with youth, John does youth ministry as well as confirmation. I run the youth ministry program at my parish, and I also run 1st through 12th grade faith formation, so it includes First Communion, baptism, confession, and confirmation. And the point I stress so frequently with parents and with pastors and everybody that I can communicate with is that the family is the primary educator of children. The church is not. The parents are the primary educators. Faith formation leaders are not. And so trying to engage the family is the vision of Vatican II's vision of education. And so bringing the family in to educate the whole family is so important, because at the end of the day, the confirmation leader, the youth minister, even the pastor is not the daily experience of kids or families. They may engage with the pastor on, Sunday, maybe a couple masses during the week at best for most families. But the daily experience is within the family. You wake up with the family, you go to bed with the family, you eat with the family. And if that family is not formed, then there's only so much that the people at the parish can do.
So they're on the right track, huh?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's almost just like any other skill in life. Being a Christian takes particular skills. I can think back to when my dad first started teaching me hockey. He didn't send me to some class to read a book I didn't care about, to learn how to stick handle or skate or do my crossovers. He actually grabbed me by the hands, helped me move on the ice. He helped me move the puck in between the cones. And from that, I started learning the skills of how to play hockey and how to play it well. Even things that my dad didn't specifically teach me, he gave me the general skills to be able to adapt to new situations. And so in the same way, if our families aren't living the faith and aren't mentoring the faith in that way, then it's going to be very difficult for kids to learn how to live the faith with, the 1 hour a week at confirmation on Wednesdays, and then the Sunday Mass. It's going to be very difficult for them to do that, because the Catholic faith, just like any other skill that we have, just like anything else that we strive for in life, does take practice. It takes hard work. And that hard work and practice, that ethic, does primarily come from our parents, because like Jake said, they are our daily reality, and they are our first model for how to live as human beings. And they're our first model of how to live as Catholics. Again, study after study has shown that it is not often the case that children's religiosity exceeds that of their parents. And so parents it's always incumbent upon them to continue to grow more deeply in their faith so that their children have more to chase after as well.
I'm glad you guys mentioned hockey, because I was a college hockey broadcaster for 35 years at Michigan Tech.
Oh, fantastic. Great. I believe you guys are great rivals of the Gophers, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I was there a few times, about 35 times.
Jeez.
35 years. But anyway, this is great what you fellows are on here. Any other future projects that you're working on other than this Didache?
One thing that we're trying to develop, it's kind of in the seedling stage, is finding a home for theology degree with a focus in youth ministry. Between John and I, we've been in the field for 20 years, including volunteer experience. And really, I think a lot of theology students get great formation at places like Holy Apostles, Ave Maria, Steubenville, University of Mary, Thomas Aquinas, many great institutions. But we've both found that one of the big things lacking is the practical day-to-day experience of a youth minister. I remember the first time I sat down at my first job, I sat at the desk and I thought, well, now what do I do? I got the job, I have the desk, I have the office, now I have no idea what I'm doing. And over the last decade, encountering difficulties within parish life, or how a diocese works, who contact people are, how do you start programs, how do you run programs. These are things that are just not taught at the collegiate level and are really so necessary. The average turnover rate or burnout rate of a youth minister is 18 months. And if the church really desires to get the youth back into the pews, it has to realize that the youth today are seeking stability. And if Christ and his bride are not the stable figure that they set themselves up to be, it's no wonder so many youth leave. And if the youth's first experience of the church, or the primary experience of the church, is through the youth ministry program, and that turnover rate is every 18 months, those youth are not going to stay. They're going to see the church as one other human institution that fails, that leaves them, that breaks down, and those youth are gone. And so we're developing courses and curricula for this project. We hope to find a home for it in the next year or two, and continue to develop it and teach those lessons that theology students really need to have as they enter into this field.
We're actually working. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, we're actually working a little bit with people like Jim Beckman. He and I are going to be speaking a little bit later this week, and Jim's a nationally renowned youth speaker and expert on youth ministry, and he's a professor over at the Augustine Institute. I had him for one of my courses. Absolutely wonderful individual who knows a tremendous amount about what's really effective youth ministry, and so he's going to be helping us out with that too. But yeah, like Jake said, there's just so much that youth ministers are unprepared to do. I mean, even in a lot of ways, basic stuff. I've known youth ministers who have worked in the field for 3 or 4 years, and they can't really deliver a talk. And that can be a problem, especially if you're going to be trying to teach. You can't just sit up there and speak as if you're talking to talking to a wall and talking in a monotone voice with no direction, with no hook, with no problems that you're solving, with no jokes, and expect that the kids are going to really latch on to what you're saying and take your message to heart. So there's a lot of skills that youth ministers, as valuable as they are just not prepared with. And the hard part, too, is we've both noticed as a youth minister, you wear every hat. You're a psychologist, you're a theologian, you're a philosopher, you're an electrician, you're a plumber, you're a craftsman, you name it. Everything that we have to do in youth ministry, geez, it's astounding what we have to learn to work with. And so many youth ministers are just ill-prepared for the actual real-life experience of what it takes to do the job.
Yeah, one quick anecdote to that is because of the success that John and I have had in our programs working together, I've been able to build a new youth room because we had a little youth room that was grossly undersized for the size of the program and the direction it was going. And so over the last about 4 months, I've been ripping out walls in the former rectory and laying floor and building cabinets and all kinds of things. So working with youth sometimes is the last thing we do in a given week.
Yeah, which is just terrible. And I'm a little bit jealous of Jake here. I'm very happy for him, obviously, but I've got a dinky little youth room too, and if I got 40 or 50 people in there, it's not even a 20 by 20 space, and I'm really, really thankful for it. The youth minister before me had that one built, but I don't think they expected the growth that they've had. And so Jake has this very eerie ability to convince people to do things that they don't want to do, that he knows are good for them. And so I gotta figure out what Jake did here and see if I can build a youth room for myself that's appropriate to the ministry that I'm doing.
Yeah, at the end of the day, none of the pastors understood why it got built or how, but they're all happy it did. So.
I'm glad you the family period.
That was quite a day when you two came together. What did you say? Was that about 10 years ago now, or what?
7, I think.
Yeah, I came to the church in 2011. I was examining it in 2010, so I think I met you in the fall of 2010 at the core team retreat.
About 6 or 7 years ago now.
So I don't know if you mentioned your academic pursuits at Holy Apostles.
I'm after this semester, I have 1 semester left before my master's in philosophy with a concentration on ethics.
And I am working on my master's in philosophy, and my focus is in systematic philosophy because in looking at the curriculum, I felt that it would make me a very well-rounded thinker because my intention is to actually go on and get my doctorate in philosophy through the Catholic University of Lublin in Poland. If that doesn't work out, I would like to possibly get a doctorate in theology through Holy Apostles itself. but I'm letting that be open to the Lord in terms of which program I would join. Right now, I think I'd prefer the doctorate in philosophy as kind of my end game for my formal education.
That is going to be possible to get a doctor's degree online here shortly, huh?
I believe so, yes.
That's good. So, what can on this Didache? Could you give us an idea of how the first one's what's going to look like? It's hard on radio, I know, but what's it how's it going to be laid out?
Well, the layout, I'm actually just pulling our mock edition up here so I can walk through it a little bit more. So if you have a question for John or something, that'd be great. I'm just going to pull this up in a minute here.
So we can give you a more accurate description.
So it's pretty exciting, huh?
Oh, it's absolutely exciting. Like I said before, I never imagined myself going into academia, and suddenly have all this stuff happen. It's just astounding. It's very humbling about what God can do in your life if you simply respond to His call and continue to move forward in faith. So it's been a great lesson for me to never really limit what God can do for you.
I was just talking. We have a program on Mondays at 2:00. It's 8:00 in Rome with a student in Rome, Natalia Eugen, and she was just saying. I said, "Is it a reality yet, Natalia, or are you still dreaming?" Because she never dreamed she'd ever wind up in Rome. But she's like we said, you give your life to the Lord, and it's like better fasten your seatbelts because you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's how I feel right now. I mean, I feel like I've just been in some sort of I don't want to say car crash because everything's turning out really well, but I'm feeling just as disordered and disoriented with how quickly and how well things have moved in the last couple of, just even the last 6 months here. It's just been fantastic for both my education and for my own professional pursuits as well.
Well, it's good to see your excitement and your enthusiasm and so forth, because there's just nothing like it when you're following God. It's just beautiful. So, okay, the layout now.
Yeah, so the beginning of the journal is going to be a summation of the Didache, the goal of it, the vision, the mission statements, followed by profiles of the student contributors and faculty or outside contributors. And then the goal is to have 2 editions per year, and each edition containing 6 papers submitted by students representing 6 of the different concentrations, and then over a year that will cover the entire scope of the work that Holy Apostles does at the graduate level. And then after the 6 submissions offered by the school itself of Holy Apostles College and Seminary, there will be a guest author submission from somebody outside of the Holy Apostles family.
Mm-hmm.
One person we have in mind too who helped us kind of get things going with the New England Didache is actually Jimmy Aiken of Catholic Answers. He has a couple of really high-quality articles, he really does, on various biblical apologetics or biblical theology themes. And in talking to him, I think that because of the help that he actually offered us, he might be one of the first people who has an opportunity to publish as a guest contributor.
We'll also include at the end of the journal information about Holy Apostles College and Seminary, other upcoming events in and around New England and the school, but also other events of regional note, depending on where our subscriptions go, and then other opportunities within Holy Apostles. I know they have a Dead Philosopher Society there, and so trying to reach out to other groups doing great work so that there can be some cross-promotion as well.
Yeah, one thing I definitely want to promote too is I know that Dr. Peter Redpath does quite a bit work in organizing various talks and events surrounding Christian wisdom and its engagement with the culture. And I think there's one in New York this year. I might be mistaken about that. But that's one thing that I want to include in there too, is a lot of the work that Dr. Redpath has done.
Yes, I've had a few interviews with him too. He's quite a guy. He's the one that has excitement and confidence too. I mean, he's full of confidence, and he's really moving forward, isn't he?
Oh, he's written books left and right, and seen some of his curriculum for his Christian wisdom concentration over at Holy Apostles, and that all looks very fascinating. It's definitely high-level work there too. So yeah, he's definitely moving forward. It's good to have him on board. Holy Apostles.
I know a little bit about excitement, being broadcasting hockey for 35 years. So, and I can see it in him, and I can see it in you guys. I mean, it's just beautiful to see, and that's what's going to change things.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Excitement, enthusiasm, confidence, just moving ahead and trusting in God.
Well, so it's been a good year. Much more to that. Yeah, it certainly sounds good to me, and thankfully God has occasionally given us good ideas to pursue too. So I can't really credit my own self with that. Okay, so we'll be back next week, of course, with another guest, and I think we have Don DeMarco, professor at Holy Apostles, is going to be with us next Monday night at this time. So in the meantime, God bless each and every one of you. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and we'll see you again next Monday night at 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Thank you again, Jacob and Jonathan. Thank you, Bob.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.